Okay. What fun. Hey, full screen, go. There's fewer of you, and my computer is now speaking to me, so hang on, let me mute that. Good. Hi. Look at all of you. You're all like, there's fewer. I get used to it, don't worry. Okay, so reminder again, if you have not been around, the noise level is increasing for this Saturday Film Fest Petaluma. Of course, you guys probably understand all of the goings on. The filmmaker for tomorrow at the cinema series is the same guy that's going to be shooting with students on Friday or Thursday or Friday or I don't know what, and then they're going to put it all together into something, and it's going to end up on screen on Saturday. So if you haven't been to Film Fest Petaluma, you should. It's fun, and it's good. It's a good event. You will learn a lot, and you can cheer on your fellow students for whatever it's worth. Okay, so meanwhile, log into the server, download the Class 15 folder, put it to your desktop, and then open up CS6, and then after we do the Q&A, we'll start in on my favorite software program of all time, Lying. I can't even get that one through my teeth without admitting to it. All right, so what I'll tell you is Encore. The short answer is Encore is still in the course outline, but honestly speaking, there is a ever diminishing demand for disc authoring out there. There are fewer and fewer businesses doing it, and so the ones who are still doing it have actually been increasing their rates because they can. These are market forces at work. Now, honestly, most of you guys are never going to probably run into the situation of needing to have a professional disc authoring, project done for you. But it will be helpful, I think, to expand on what you guys got in the last, in the B class at least, about how to, if you ever needed to put something together, you have the ability to create something on your own that allows you to make use of Blu-ray and DVD as a format for you guys to distribute on. Generally speaking, though, I don't advise doing it that way. Fewer and fewer operators are doing it. I will say, though, that there is a booming festival business in Blu-ray disc. A lot of distributors will, if you get your film into distribution, basically will still get it put onto a festival cut. But a festival cut onto something like a Blu-ray is the most reductive version of a DVD or Blu-ray disc that you will ever see. So yeah, buddy.
Question: when movies are becoming like more streaming online,
yes.
Deals, so I assume that will be the future for all discs.
Yeah, who would have thought Apple knew this? How long ago?
But my question is, so is there any reason to learn Encore to put it up in that respect, or do we just render it like we normally would in After Effects?
I think that the stuff that I'm going to show you in the next couple of weeks is, and don't take this the wrong way because you will be tested on it, so you got to learn it, is not likely to be something you're going to do a lot with by comparison. I mean, and I tell you, I have negotiated it down from 4 weeks to 2 with Mike. So you should thank me for the fact that you're only going to get 2 weeks of Encore instead of 4, because that was what originally was that we would spend more time doing this. And I've been kind of hammering away at the chipping away ever so slightly, like granite, at the resolve of the department to teach it this way. And this is all getting captured on YouTube. This is going to be the best lecture ever. So good news is I get to cut the beginning of it. I can start when I start the lecture, and all of these preamble comments will die along with all of that. So yeah, I mean, it's a thing. You know, I don't think that Encore has a particularly relevant future. Clearly, Adobe doesn't. Apple has abandoned all of their disk authoring tools. So take that for what you want. Like I said, the Creative Cloud allows you to install any of the CS6 tools, including Premiere CS6, which includes Encore. There's no way to install it other than that. So yeah, another follow-up? Or?
Yeah, my follow-up was with that maybe being the outro of the software. Do you see any other Adobe or any related programs being put in something to look out for in the future?
Well, so if you want to talk about like what's replacing Blu-ray and DVD in terms of interactivity,
more that I was looking for if there was any other media encoder or.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in 2 weeks.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah, we're going to talk about media encoding as a delivery mechanism. That's 2 weeks away. So that'll be our last week before you come in and turn in your final projects, and we still have to have the conversation about when I'm going to let you have the final exam. And you guys have probably all universally going to be like, please, Randy, please give it to us the week before. And I don't know. I may yet relent. But we'll see. I go through the trouble of arranging for a final class to happen here so you can drop off your stuff. So, maybe having it be more than just a, hey, Randy, here you go, pew, and out the door. I don't know. Well, like I said, I've done that a couple of times now, and it's the most underwhelming finale to a class that I've ever had to experience. Pizza party? Jesus. Well, you guys paying? You buying?
I'll throw a pizza.
You'll throw a pizza in? All right. We'll talk. We got a couple weeks left before we have that, before we have to make that choice.
Potluck.
What's that?
Potluck.
Potluck. It could be a potluck, but generally with potlucks, it's going to be 15 people bringing like chips and salsa, and we're going to drown in tortilla chips. But hey, man, you do you. It's all good. Yeah, you're going to be like, no, Randy said a sign-up sheet, and it's like it all kind of mushrooms from there. So, all right, let's go ahead and get on to our weekly roundup. I gotta say, you guys start doing your dang Q&A questions. I only got 6. The hell? You guys there's like a dozen of you in the room, and only half have brought me something to talk about this week. So, guys, that's points you're leaving on the table. Don't do that. That's a bad idea. I get that it's like you're busy and it's the end of the semester, and I gave you a couple of weeks where I didn't give you any homework because I love you guys and I want to make sure that you're head's not exploding. But yeah, really. And I'll give you some of the questions are they're starting to have a similar sort of like, hey, I know I asked you this last week, but I haven't really come up with something new, so I'm going to ask it again. And so, that sort of thing. And I'm like, please, guys, part of it is this week's questions were supposed to pertain to Handwave. So I'm very, very easygoing this week. And the fact that only 6 of you asked questions, I was just like, well, all right. So anyway, here we go. Man, don't disappoint me. All right. So this one's an interesting one. I didn't know the answer to it, so I had to figure it out. So if you're using the Ultra Key in Premiere, there's an effect in Premiere called Ultra Key. Is it possible to keep an item in the shot even if it's too similar to the green screen used? So the answer is it can be done. but not as well as key light because I did it. So I did this in the office about 1.5 hours ago, where I said, I don't know. So I whipped together my favorite, green screen clip with green clothes, and so you'll see. And let me turn out the light because even though the sun is streaming in, let's kill the light here. So you can see that it's not a great key. There's some definite. I mean, you can see it more on my screen than you can here. There's definitely not a great mask. The mat is a little bit dodgy, but I mean, I came up with all sorts of settings where I worked on the mat and I cranked values around so that I could get it as high contrast as possible, because the point of it when you pull a key is to get the closest. You want to get as dark. You want to get the background as dark as possible with the first eyedropper. So if it's not a real good even background, you go back to the eyedropper, try a different color, try a different shade of that background key to sample. Now remember, this one, the background had all kinds of ripply stuff in it, so it's not perfect. But again, as soon as I pulled the key, her clothes went gray, and so I spent a lot of fussing around with trying to get all of that information back in, and then I did basically a spill suppression to basically bring some of the original color back in. But what you notice is that the edge has a decidedly green tinge to it, and that is again indicative of the quality of the plugin. So can you do can Ultra Key do this job? Yes, it can. And it didn't please me that I had to, but I mean, it was one of these things where you wrestle with it and you go, well, I got, but if you understand that the goal is to take the mat that you're creating and make her as white as possible and make the background as black as possible. So you realize that there's a contrast move involved. There's going to be choking of black and white points in the mat, so that you're trying to create as hard a contrast as possible. And then once you got that, you then have to turn her clothes back into their original color. So it's not a particularly challenging problem. If she had not been wearing green clothes, Ultra Key would have been much easier to do. Absolutely, much easier to do. Yeah, you had a question back there? No? Okay. So yeah. I did the screen caps just so that you guys could see. I didn't really want to go into the details of how. I could, but I seriously, with challenging footage, you should be taking it into After Effects to key. Okay, don't try to make it work with lesser plugins if you don't have to. If you don't have After Effects available to you, you can get something usable kind of out of this. You might have to mess with it further, and it might not be as pleasing a result as what you might get out of something like After Effects. So keep that in mind. Oh, okay. This was an interesting. What's the difference between Perlin, fractal, and turbulent noise? Does anybody know the difference? Good, because it's a trick question. Perlin and fractal noise. So Perlin noise is what the fractal noise and turbulent noise plugins in After Effects, the effects in After Effects, are actually using. So that's fine. So they're more or less the same thing. There's a claim out there that the turbulent noise effect, which came on board years back in CS4, is better than fractal noise, meaning that it uses it uses slightly less compute resources, but habits are hard. Habits are a hard thing, and you find a lot of people will just use fractal noise because they just remember fractal noise. But turbulent noise has a little bit of extra mojo going on. There's the ability to there's a turbulence ratio that you can put in there, and it starts to make a difference. So it starts to be something that you can point to and say, yeah, it's better. But they are visually very strongly related and more or less plug and play differences of each other. They have almost exactly the same settings. So yeah, take it for what it's worth. If you guys want to look into turbulent noise, if you put, like I did, I actually did this. Oh, what the heck? Let's do it. So creating a new composition. Into that, I'm going to create a solid. We're going to call this one fractal noise. Okay. And then we're going to duplicate it. And then we're going to hit enter and call this one turbulent noise. Okay. So now you've got fractal noise and you've got turbulent noise. Now you go over to the effects area and you just type noise, and you'll see that you have fractal noise and turbulent noise. These are the two ones that are in there. The other noise that's in here is just noise. I mean, it's just like pixel noise. So just so that you can see what it looks like, it's not particularly good looking. Okay, so it's like you have a noise type, you have a clipping point, and then you have just an amount. And the amount can be, changed over time, but realistically, it's certainly not as versatile as, say, a fractal noise or some other thing of that nature. So the noise with nothing in front of it is the least of the three that you have. Now, these are all the ones in here that say noise alpha, noise HLS auto. These are all 8-bit effects. I wouldn't use them in any film projects at all. I mean, unless there was something about them that you really needed. So, but anyway, we're talking about fractal noise and turbulent noise. So let's compare the two. So fractal noise, I'm going to drop onto the fractal noise layer. The turbulent noise, I'm going to drop on the turbulent noise layer. And now I'm just going to kind of A and B these two effects. Just look over here in this area as I click between them. So you'll see that the settings are largely the same, okay? In fact, from all surface accounts, they look identical. The main difference is under evolution options. If you look under fractal noise, you have these settings where it says cycle evolution and a random seed. That's partly because with fractal noise, you can actually loop the evolution. So you can have, if you want the same pattern to repeat forever, you want it to kind of loop over a 10-second or 5-second or whatever. As long as this, so the way that works is usually when you increase the evolution on this, you will see, well, of course I got to turn that off. When you increase the evolution on this, you'll see that it changes, right? So every circle, or every time you go one full circle around this loop, this counter over on this on the left side increases. So as you go from 0 to 1, you'll see that it changes. Now, if you come down here, it should be that if you cycle evolution, you should be able to, it doesn't change now. Now it stays the same. So every cycle on this loop will basically start from the beginning. So that can be useful to you. There is under there, if you want the cycles in the revolutions to be more varied over time, you can increase this number and it makes this more active. That's the difference there. So generally speaking, if you want to if you want to do the cycle evolution where you loop your fractal noise, then fractal noise is the effect for you. Now, if you want to do it, so the other thing to take away from this is the default, they don't look the same. The default settings are not identical because this doesn't look like that. So there is some difference visually, but in terms of how you set it up, there really isn't that much difference. Now, so like I said, with evolution options under fractal noise, it looks like this. Under turbulent noise, you have a turbulence factor, which is currently was set to 1.5. That still doesn't look identical, so whatever. But as you see, if you increase it, what happens is it seems to kind of make everything. I don't know. It looks like it's affecting the sublayer, and it looks like it is it's making some kind of it looks like to me like it's a cross somewhere between a wiggle and a twitch in terms of how it behaves with how evolution changes over time. So if you have a very large turbulence factor, as this evolves, you'll see that it seems to have a lot more very fine detail in terms of the evolution, whereas under fractal noise, because it doesn't have that, it's a little more, oops, sorry, my bad. It doesn't have quite as much of that sort of, very fine detail in terms of when you change the evolution over time. All right, so I don't know. I mean, there's more to it than that, but that's kind of where I looked at it and said, yeah, okay, this is interesting. There are some additional options under the transform between. Well, actually, no, I think that these are the same in terms of that. Yeah, so between the two, it's a slight change, but not much. So your mileage may vary. Experiment. But the claim is also that turbulent noise takes fewer compute resources to do its job. So, it's worth a try as well. But otherwise, it's as useful as fractal noise, and perhaps a little better. Okay. Questions there? Yeah, Vicky, you got something? No, I'm just holding your hat down so it doesn't fly off. Okay, cool. All right, so back to this. When combining CGI and live action assets, should we use After Effects, or is there a better program? This is what I mean. These are the questions are being retreaded. How good is After Effects? Should I really learn it? Yes. So the short answer is use After Effects. And because again, it's the tool you have. It's the tool you've been learning. You've now spent 8 weeks with this software, hopefully, and you have at least some familiarity with it. You might not feel totally weird when you go, I got to go create a new comp. Oh, I'm going to make it 30 frames a second, or I'm going to make it 24 frames a second, or I'm going to make it 10 seconds long, 5 seconds long. I'm going to make it I'm going to use the ray trace render engine. Woohoo! It's like you can make some of these choices because you've had a little bit of exposure to it. But once you've spent time experimenting with and kind of diving down the rabbit hole, as I put it, if at that point you still feel like you need a challenge, then I'd say go find Autodesk Smoke as a node-based compositor. Autodesk provides for students a 3-year license for free. So you could go apply for a 3-year license as a student and get Smoke to be able to play with for non-commercial purposes, of course, for 3 years for no charge. And that is, if anybody understands how the razor blade market works, you get what they're doing is because they're giving you the tool for 3 years for free so that you learn to use it, you learn to love it, you get used to it, and then when the time comes where you're like, oh, my 3 years is up and I still want to use it, they're like, we gotcha. So, but you can always take advantage of that time as well. You don't have to, if that's the way you want to learn how to use it, you can use a node-based compositor, or you can continue to just use After Effects, which many people do. So yeah, I mean, CGI and live action assets, they really, CGI assets with an alpha channel that's rendered with an alpha channel, and live action assets that you might green screen or, God bless you, rotoscope, basically behave the same when you composite them. Okay, so yeah, don't hurt yourself, but be safe, experiment, have fun, but use the software you got, because trust me, you haven't even begun to test the limits of what this thing can do. So regarding After Effects preferences, media and disk cache, could you go over the settings, best practices, conformed media cache, XMP metadata? Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about this. So media and disk cache is really where you can kind of notch out just a little bit more performance out of your rendering, because if you point your media and disk cache at a solid state disk that's very high performance, then your intermediate files that After Effects needs to generate while it's rendering things will go just that little bit faster than if you point it at a mechanical disk with spinning platters. That's inherently slower, and so you'll see some performance improvement there. Regarding XMP metadata, so how many of you guys know what XMP is? Great, I'm glad everybody knows that. So XMP metadata, oh my God. Let's see, they do have actually it's in Premiere, so we'll talk. We'll switch back over here. So when you work in footage, you will you'll eventually run across this sort of look, which is the metadata that is associated with the media files that you have. Okay, so generally speaking, when you shoot with your camera, some metadata is being stored in the media file along with the actual video that you're encoding. Anybody want to hazard a guess as to what sort of things what are metadata? Coleman?
The time, where, and how the file was recorded or created.
Sure, yeah. So some of that information would definitely be there. Also, some metadata that you might not think is metadata is what is the encoding. So is it H.264? Is it 1080p? That all kind of adds up to metadata. So all of it. So the frame size is metadata. The frame rate is metadata. But those are the obvious ones. Now with some cameras, you'll actually be able to record things like, well, actually, other obvious metadata is like, what is the audio sample rate? What is the audio bit depth? What are, so the things that make the file what it is. But you also have notions of, what sometimes, depending on the camera, you can actually store what the focal length of the shot is, because the lens actually communicates it to the camera, which then stores it in the file as the shot. So, and it would usually be the starting. So if you're doing like a zoom pull or something, it's not going to be like, well, it started at 18.2 and went to 24.5. No, it's going to be whatever the starting, focal length is, and f-stop usually as well, and shutter speed. Those are all candidates for the sort of information that can be stored as metadata in your media files. Not all cameras do this, but some do. So you can take advantage of it. In addition to all of that, okay, so that's the metadata that the camera puts on there, and usually that's read-only to you. Okay, you don't want it. And if you treat camera footage like it's a negative, you generally don't want to fool with the original media file. You want to preserve the integrity of that original media file. But you also want to be able to, as an editor, log information about that media. What shot was it? What take was it? What scene was it for? And if you have that information from your camera department, what lens was used? What focal length? What focus point? That's all information that your camera folks should be logging as you do each shot. If they're doing a focus pull, your assistant camera can and should log the focus points. They say, oh, we start at 24 feet and we do a pull because we're doing a dolly in. We do a pull to 8.3 feet or something like that. So you do have the ability to log all of that information somewhere. And that is all, but it doesn't go in the original media file. So where does it go? So what they came up with was this, this notion of a sidecar metadata file. And the sidecar metadata file is XMP. So, and it is, and you'll see here, it says powered by XMP. This is just an XML-based metadata format for media. And it actually has all sorts of different different groups or different possible content types. So you have under dynamic media, you'll see a whole host of different ones in here, like frame rate, pixel aspect ratio, pixel depth. So pixel aspect ratio, if your camera is like a Panasonic that does that stores your media, 1440 by 1080, but then stretches the pixels to make a 1920 by 1080, your pixel aspect ratio is actually not 1:1, it's 4:3. So it's like there's a little bit of weird, math going on in there. You have pixel depth, which is, how many bits per pixel. You have what color space. So is this, and there's a variety there we don't really go into here. And so on. So there's lots of different things that you can put in here, but you also have start time code, end time code, and then you have things like scene name, shot name, location, a log comment, which is sometimes it'll be either from your camera or your script supervisor or some other department is going to have notes for that shot. You'll have, so some of that information can be stored inside the file. This is all assistant editor tasks, okay? These are when you're logging information and you're getting media in, your assistant editor is probably going to be charged with, and if you're the assistant editor, you'll be charged with filling this data in, this metadata, so that it is available to the editor in the program. So that when they load it, they can actually search for, now let's look at all of the angles we have for this take or for this shot in this scene. That should be something they can search for relatively easily. And if you're worth your salt as an assistant editor, you'll have grouped and binned all of your footage so that the editor knows where to find it as well. But that's another matter entirely. So all of this metadata ends up in a sidecar file that's named the same name as the media file, but instead of MP4, it's going to be yada 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 .xmp, and usually it is stored alongside the media file itself. You do have the option to change that. So let's talk a little bit about what that means. So when you come down to, is it under media? Let's see. Yeah, so there's media cache files under here, which are literally where Premiere, and you find this also in After Effects, where rendered intermediate pieces of data are going to be kept. Whenever you import new files, or whenever you import new media, and it does a conforming of the audio or video files, it's putting things it's doing things in the cache. Okay, it's dropping them there. You notice it does say write XMP ID to files on import, write clip markers to XMP, enable clip and XMP metadata. So it's like all of these are available to you. Use them as you see fit. I mean, I've used them to varying degrees. It can be useful. Depends on the project you're working on and who you're working with. So inside of After Effects, I believe, you have a media and disk cache group here, and so you do have a disk cache here. The conformed media cache, I believe, I don't know this for certain, but I believe this is all of it is basically being rendered as a single intermediate format, and that's what the confirmation is here. So, but so usually, what's that?
If you clean your database and cache, does that mean it's just like wiped out?
Well, okay, so understand that cache in this case is not, if you clean it out, anything that it needs to do, it's going to regenerate. So what happens is over time, and this is actually a very good point. What happens is over time, as you're working in more and more projects, and you finish projects and you archive them and you put it on a disk and you put that disk in a closet somewhere or a shoebox, or you put it in your friend's in the gym shoes or whatever. I don't know what you do with your disks. It's okay. It's a big umbrella. We all can, it's like there's plenty of it. But when you put your projects away, the cache still, the media cache in both Premiere and After Effects still has those files. It doesn't know to get rid of them. And so there's no way for it to automatically know that you're done with that project. So every once in a while, what you'll see is that you're like, wow, my computer's slowing down. Wow, I have no free disk space. It's like I've looked through all of my documents and I've moved them all off to different disks and I still have no disk space. Part of that is that you might have disk cache issues where you've got lots and lots of projects that have had these intermediate files generated, and After Effects and Premiere doesn't know that you're done with them. So you should, as a practice, make a habit of, probably more than once a year, less than once a week. Okay, did I bound it correctly? I mean, do you guys get the idea? Is like, it doesn't have to be every day, but it also doesn't need to be every 5 years. You should, or never. You should clean out. You should clean up your cache by just clicking Clean Database and Cache. It's gonna, and usually this one will go pretty quick. If you click on this, it's gonna be, are you sure? Delete all 784 megabytes of your disk cache. Now, if this, because of these all, if you do this to these computers, there's not going to be much there, because every time you boot them, they're reflashed with the OS base level. So it's like all of the disk caches are always wiped on these computers every time you boot them. It's a hidden benefit. But what you might find on your own computer running this over the course of a semester is that there might be more than 784 megs. There might be several gigs of media cache storage in use, because you have a maximum cache size right here that's set to a number, and whatever that is, that's how much disk space you're saying it's okay for them to use in the execution of what your desires are as you explore the rabbit hole. So so if you come in here and you click on empty it and you go, are you sure? You say, hell yes, and now it's empty. Okay, and now actually it says, oh, it's and actually they even tell you, for improved performance, choose a disk cache folder on a fast hard drive or solid state disk separate from footage, and allocate as much space as you can possibly give it, because it'll make After Effects faster from the point of view of doing rendering. It's going to improve rendering performance. It's not going to necessarily improve, usability dependent. It could. I mean, because if you're hitting play and you're previewing, your previews will go faster because it's rendering to a faster disk. So, all right, that answer the question? Any other questions about media caching and the fun and the fun and frivolity of the preferences panes inside of Premiere and After Effects? So in here, just to make it really awkward, I don't think that there's actually an easy way to, you can clean it here. You click clean and it will wipe whatever media cache is in that file or is in that folder. But again, it's not going to be, it's not huge. Whatever it is, it's not huge. Okay. So, inform media cache, and say yes. Okay, good, we got it. Is there a way to edit a Premiere Pro sound clip in Encore the same way you can add effects to a clip in After Effects and have it automatically applied back to the clip in Premiere? My God, what a wordy. Okay, so anyway, the short answer is Encore, no. Short answer is no. Encore really has the fewest content editing abilities of anything in the Creative Suite or Creative Cloud apps. I mean, it's literally just does one thing, and that one thing it does is it makes discs. It makes disk images, and that's what it does. So, you know, your mileage may vary. All right. Okay. Will CD be irrelevant soon in the workplace? CD, really? CD. All right. Well, I'll answer it. CD has been irrelevant for at least 15 years, but you can still buy them. You know, they still have music stores that you can go out to. I hear tell that Walmart still sells CDs. Target still sells CDs. But, you know, yeah. DVD is largely irrelevant for any new video work, even though I'm going to make you use it. I know. That's the best part. And Blu-ray is not quite irrelevant yet, but it certainly isn't cutting edge anymore. You know, not when you know, there's all of this, oh, but Blu-ray 3D, or there's, but Blu-ray 4K, and it's like, yeah, but I mean, yeah, all right, Coleman, let me have it.
So I was just wondering if you think any disc media would be irrelevant in any time in the future, just because we are switching over to more digital components and having any sort of physical media other than, let's just say, like a memory unit would be just pretty much useless.
Well, what? Okay, we'll get into some of this pontification. Sure, why not? So, I think that, you know, this was a question that I started to pose earlier, was the difference that we're talking about is there's distribution of content, and then there's the interactive experience of content. So from the interactive experience, I think that, you know, a lot of people look at HTML5 and in-browser sort of stuff for delivering the interactivity elements that DVD and Blu-ray have currently, because you can do things like overlays, and you can do things like clickable menus and changing activities and changing actions using JavaScript and other things to start and stop playback, or to switch content from one clip to another clip, or move forward or backward inside of a media clip. All of that can be done using HTML5 techniques, using JavaScript and the video player capabilities that are built into most browsers now automatically. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's more valuable for media creators now than it is to know how Blu-ray menus work, or how that flow chart of a disc works. But, you know, it's not bad, and it's not useless. Well, okay, it's not bad, but it's, you know, the utility is diminishing. I mean, what can I can't lie to you. I mean, it's not, none of you are going to make a living authoring discs, okay? I'll just put that out there now. So, you know, and one of you will make a liar out of me, and that's the exception, and that's okay. But the rest of you, you're going to be the rule. And but so don't you know, sit there and go, I really paid attention to how Encore works, because nobody uses Encore anymore for you know, professional level authoring. Professional level authoring is mostly being done using Sony software that costs over 10 grand. So, you know, you got 10 grand? I don't. School does, but they're not teaching it to you. So anyway, all right. I think that's enough for that. Any questions on this one? I mean, yeah, the disc format thing is kind of it's a painful subject, because where you guys are literally, I hope we're beyond the halfway point of transitioning from disc-based delivery of content to whatever the future is, and we see what that is now. I mean, people are starting to envision it, create it, and have it be those experiences that you can just go to a web address and start to have, because broadband is now reasonably fast enough in North America, and the ability to you know, dynamically change what the browser renders at any time is also part of that mechanic. All right. Oh, look, an empty screen only means one thing. It's time to move on to something else. All right. Oh, you guys. It is 7:55. So we're going to talk a little bit about, I think we'll just do the base introduction of Encore. We'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll do the flowcharty stuff and all of the this and that and the other. And then we'll wrap it for the night. Yeah, the Q&A, even though there was only 6 of you, I stretched it for as long as I could. Yay me. All right. So what are we going to talk about tonight? We're going to talk about the Encore interface. Now, again, I'll go relatively fast through reminding you of this because most of you have already seen Encore in your previous, unless you tested out of B, you will have seen this software before. Okay, so show of hands, how many of you guys have used it? Alyssa, you've never used it? See, you weren't listening. Okay, that's cool. That's all right. So I was asking, how many of you have used Encore? You've used Encore? Yeah, okay, cool. You just don't want to raise your hand. I get it. All right, hey, I'm there too. I didn't, and yeah, I'm up here. So yeah, Encore, we'll go through the interface. We're going to talk about what's called the disk flow chart. We are going to talk about how you create assets for Premiere, or for Encore using the other tools that we've been using, whether it's Premiere, After Effects, or Photoshop. We can then go into menus and timelines, and we'll end with these ideas of end actions. So this all kind of ties into this flow chart, this disk flow chart. What happens when you put a disk into a player and close the drawer? That's when the magic, with air quotes around it, starts happening when it comes to this disk flow chart. Okay? So, all right. Without any further ado, here we are. Okay. I have loaded for you the Class 15 DVD Encore project. There are some assets that went missing on this, and I don't know where I've put them. So I will, if I find them on the break, I will make them available. And if I don't find them on the break, then we will soldier on without them, and we'll just replace them with something else. Or we'll create them, or create something like them inside of Premiere, and then we'll bring them in. So, all right, we've, when you talk about the interface here, you've got a project pane on the left side. You've got a preview, or they call it the monitor, where you can see this is basically where you can preview content that's currently selected. You have a notion of a flow chart, which in this case is relatively basic. It's a single line of action that goes from the disk downward. You have the notion of there's a notion down here of timelines, and when you select a timeline and you show a timeline here, you start to, so if you have a timeline showing, you'll see that there is something that looks remarkably like a sequence in Premiere, or to a lesser extent, a comp in After Effects, where there's video tracks, there's audio tracks. You have a notion of slideshows, which we don't really go into for the class. Again, if you want to learn how to do slideshows, there are tutorials available to you. But I'm gonna gloss over that particular part. They do end up being it's another way to display static images. So sure, you can either do a sequence of static images and play it out as a timeline, or you create a slideshow, which largely ends up doing the same thing. You have the notion over here on the right-hand side of a properties pane. You have a character pane, and you have a metadata pane, which once again talks about the XMP metadata that is associated with any particular media file. So if you click on a media file, you see that this lights up with all sorts of ability to look at some of that information. So Dublin Core is not going to tell us anything. Let's go to dynamic media, and you'll see that some of these, nope, that's even, I even made a liar out of me there. All right, fine, whatever. the idea of you can peruse the metadata for any particular piece of content. Generally speaking, I don't use it that much. Down here, you have a notion of libraries, which has some, sometimes it will have some of these in here. There's different sets available to you. Again, these are pretty dated. They're pretty 1990s in their stylings. But, what are you going to do? You have a set of styles also, which are specific, smaller elements of presets that you can apply to different, elements in your project. And then you have layers. Now, layers end up happening when we deal with menus. When you open up menus, you'll see that layers actually has something going on here. And it kind of shows you what it is about menus that we will get to a little later on after we finish or after we take a break. So part of the fun of the fun that you get out of Encore is the notion of this flow chart. So what are we looking at here? And the good news is that many of the things like the back, using the backtick or the tilde key, when you've selected a tab, zooms the window just like you're more or less used to. So you actually can look at the entire flow of a disk from here all the way through. So what is this? What does the flow chart actually mean here? So the flow chart generally starts with the disk itself, and what that means is then you have this arrow, and this arrow is what's called. Anybody want to know what the name of this is called? Anybody know what it is?
Play.
It's called the first play. So when you drop a disk in and you close the drawer, the disk will tell the player, oh, my first play action is this. And so you'll see that in this case, it is to play a disk intro, which is actually a piece of content. It's video. After the video finishes, the end action of that is to now go to the main menu. And then the main menu will display several options that you can then do, where it actually has two options. One says play and the other says chapters. And you can actually verify that by going back and looking at this, and it says there's play and there's chapter. So you have two buttons in here, and actually notice that when I click on play, it highlights this one. Click on chapters, it highlights that one. Just keep an eye on this. This actually becomes relevant when we want to do something later. So back to the flow chart. So if you click play, the action for play is to basically play the main timeline, and then after the main timeline's finished, and actually it's chapter 1 of the main timeline, and once the main timeline is finished, the end action of that timeline is to go back to the main menu. Okay, and usually these are grayed out because these are defaults, or they are they basically are, yeah, they're kind of defaults. They don't actually lead anywhere other than back to the original. So it's kind of like a clone, or instead of having this loop all the way back over and create this kind of bizarre spaghetti tangle, what they did was they just kind of had these ghosts, these dimmed versions that highlight. So when you click on one, you'll see that it actually relates back to the original piece that it corresponds to. So all of these different chapter markers, so there's C1, C2, and so on, all end up underneath. There's C1, C2, and C3. Then there's actually different buttons under here that actually do different things. And so there's 3 other menu buttons that allow you to page forward and backward through stuff. That was good. Okay, so let's not do that. All right, so clearing that and going back to this. When you're looking at, and you guys, again, have probably done some manner of this, you will see that when you're looking at, if you don't select anything in the project, you'll see that the properties pane kind of updates as you select items in your menu or in the project. So if you selected menu, it's going to say menu up here. If you select a timeline, it's going to say timeline. If you select media or assets, so that would be still assets or motion assets like video files, it's going to say asset up here. And if you select none of them, it actually talks about the disk itself. You can actually do that here as well by clicking on the different items inside of the flowchart. Will do the same thing, but generally speaking, people don't navigate the project this way. They navigate it through the project pane. So your mileage may vary. And okay. Questions on the reacquaintance of Encore with what you're doing? You guys look so excited. Okay, Alyssa, what's the question?
So, I know Windows Movie Maker and I know other DVD ripping programs. You go and you have your film, then you put it in there and do your settings, and then you have to actually rip the video or rip the DVD to a disc. I know you can do a Flash movie version or like Flash DVD, but can you take that Flash DVD that you can transport through a flash drive or that you have on the computer and burn that to a DVD and insert it into a DVD player, and will it act the same as just taking your final DVD that you've made and burning it to this? Does that make sense?
What you're asking me is, what is the utility of a Flash DVD, right?
Yeah.
So if you've authored a Flash DVD, can you possibly salvage that mistake into something you can use in a real player? The answer, unfortunately, is not one you're going to like to hear. The answer is no. You have to go back to the project and actually target a real, basically a DVD image, and that is how you create. And that's what I'm going to show you guys how to do. I don't do Flash DVDs. I know Mike does, and I swear to God, we're going to have a Thunderdome this summer, and I'm gonna try and put a stop to it. We'll see. I don't know. You know, Mike, he loves Encore for some reason. I don't know why, but yeah, I'm committed to you guys never having, or any students in the future ever having to create Flash DVDs, because the problem he's run into now, and maybe you guys didn't see it before, is that Flash DVDs that you author using Encore won't play in anything, because Flash has been deprecated. It's been basically, Adobe has mostly abandoned it. And now, unless you're going to run Animate CC or whatever they call it now, which is the clever rebranding of same, but there's no, I mean, and in some cases you can get Flash running in Firefox or in Safari, or God, you know, I don't know about Edge or Internet Explorer 11 or whatever they call it now. I have no idea if you can get Adobe Flash working in them, but by and large, Flash is gone. So creating Flash DVDs is like even more of a bad idea than creating DVD images. I mean, it's like, it's even less useful than a DVD image. At least a DVD image you can burn to a disc and then put it in a DVD player and get some satisfaction. Whereas with a Flash DVD, you don't have that. You really don't, because it's basically rendering it. The Flash DVD, the idea is that it creates a very compressed version of the video, and it packages it for playback in a browser or that has Flash. Yeah. What? Come on, really?
I just was curious, because I know that when you do burn a DVD after you set everything up, you actually have to insert the disc and it burns onto the DVD. But I didn't know if you could do that.
You don't. You know, actually, there's when you go to author when you go to build a project. So say we're going here and we're gonna build the project, we actually have several options here. You can burn to a disk as an action in here, but you can also burn to an image. And the image is the ISO file that people think of when you talk about basically how different how these different disks are created from just a file on a hard disk. So, and it's, you know, and so like when you go, if you wanted to install, God forbid, if you wanted to install an operating system from a DVD, you would download what they call an ISO image from a website, and a lot of Linux versions do this still. You download the image, and then you would burn that onto a blank CDR media, or not CDR. God, my God, what am I doing? DVD-R or BDR, you know, writable media, and then you can plug that into a drive and then use it as like it was a hard disk. And that's basically what, when you create a DVD image, you're creating a file on your hard disk that you can then use to create one or more or hundreds of actual disk, you know, burned disks. And so that's what I'm going to show you guys how to do. And that's actually the format of the file that you're going to deliver your final project to me in.
In order to put that on a disk, though, you have to do it through Encore, right? If you take the
You have to build it in Encore.
Yeah.
But once the ISO is built, you can, I believe Windows has a way to do it. Does anybody know? Is there any built-in way to burn an ISO to a blank media in Windows?
I thought there was already like a self-program.
Yeah, there is. It's like DVD Maker or something, and then you just
on the computer, because like my super desktop has like this really weird program that burns discs. Like I used to burn like stuff on the disc.
Totally legal, of course, right? Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Oh, screw that. All right. No, but I hear you. So I mean, there was Roxio Toast. There was all these other things that you could use to generate and take ISO images and burn them to disk, or create, you know, you could rip them from a disk and create an ISO image from a created or from a pre-existing disk. So I mean, they have these are already in place, but I know that on Apple, on Macs, you have Disk Utility, which will take an ISO image and you can actually burn to a DVD. And if you have a Blu-ray drive, you can, or Blu-ray burner, you can burn a Blu-ray as well. But yeah, generally speaking, the idea is to have you guys generate these ISO images. You can mount them on your computers like it was a DVD, and play them in a DVD player so that you can test that they work. And then you can turn that file into me, and then I can do the same thing. And then I can play your disc and see that things happen, and then get to the end and give you an A+. I mean, it's a beautiful world, right? So, all right. So let's take a break now. It's 8:13. Let's give about 10 minutes. We'll come back. We're gonna dive into creating assets for this thing, and then move along to kind of talking about the intricacies of this flowchart. Okay. And for those of you on the stream, if you hear this, make sure that you type your name on in the chat so that I see it. So otherwise, I mark you absent and you get no points. Ha ha ha. I'm gonna unmute this so that you all can see and hear. So you guys on the stream, go ahead and shout that you can hear me again. No sound, I know. Oh my God, sound, no sound. Yeah, all right. Tell me if you can hear me. I think you guys should be able to hear me. Okay, so I'm gonna try and find this content. It is somewhere. Might not be. All right, y'all back? Most of you back? Some of you back? So there's an issue of online of they're not hearing me, so I want to hear it. So shout out if you can hear me. Smiley face. All right, it's cool. So while the people online gnash their teeth, I believe if I click on this and I tap the microphone, yeah, I can see that there's sound in the infinity window here. I can see that there's sound levels coming on that. So I'm going to guess that they can hear. So all right. Okay, so let's get back to talking about the disk. Okay, so let's look at what we've got here. So when you start to talking in here, hang on. Okay, so if you want to, we want to start talking about what's happening over here. When you're talking about the disk, the main kind of thing that we're authoring, or in the flow chart, this thing right here, you have you have some metadata that you can assign to it, like the project, the title of the disk, which is really not visible to anyone outside of the project. So this information up here is really for your reference. It's sometimes the title of the disk or the name of the disk will show up when you create the image file. It will take this name here as the name of the file that it creates. So you can change that to say, semester project, your last name, or whatever. So yeah, you and clearly I hit the end of the road because it wasn't going to let me type any more stuff. So anyway, all right. So we're all good. So now you've got the notion here of the first play. So the first play of the disk is when it gets dropped into a player. The first play, which is this thing right here, is to choose the disk intro. Disk intro is in this list, and disk intro is a timeline. So, and you can tell that disk intro is the first play because it has this cute little play button in play button decoration on the icon over there. So you can kind of look in a project and know right away of all of the things in that project, what's the first thing that will play when you drop it into the disk. So again, disk intro, the override, which we won't talk about here, we'll talk about a little bit later, is not set. But what that generally means, well, we'll talk about it here. What the hell? Override. So when you see the word override in these disks, is that every piece, everything that happens in a disk will generally have an end action associated with it. Okay, meaning that when it finishes, it's gonna do something else. Okay, and that actually that set of actions is pretty broad. It'll open a menu, or it'll go to another media clip, or it'll go to a slideshow, or it will stop the disk, or it will go back to the beginning, or it'll so there's or it'll loop. Sometimes you can make media clips that'll just play forever. Okay, it's possible. You can do it. Now the idea though is that so when you say, oh, the first play, I want the first play of the disk to be intro chapter 1, which is this right here. But then if you didn't want the default action of the disk intro to happen when it's done playing, you wanted to say, but after it's done playing, I want it to do this. That's what the override is about. So you can say that, so I don't care what disk intro tells you that it wants to do when it's done. You're going to do what I tell you to do, which is to go back to the disk intro and play it again. And now this would be, it's going to play the disk intro forever. And you'll notice that it actually, this dashed line says that the end action has been overridden. And now you would see that, oh, the override is now set to loop forever, playing the intro again and again and again until the sun explodes or until you get tired. So you can delete the action, and then it gets to not set, and then it goes back to that. So again, the first play is what the disc does when you drop it in there and close the drawer, or it insert it into the slot and it eats it up. And then you can, but on each of these notions of an end action, usually the thing that you're connecting to that next step in the has this notion of an override, and we'll see that too. So now when we go to the next piece of this, once you've done once you've dropped the disc in the tray and closed it, the disc intro plays. Notice that it says the end action is to play to go to main menu default, and it does have an override, but the override is not available. That's because main menus don't have the ability to override it. Only timelines or slideshows or other things can be overridden, but not menus. Menus don't have a single thing that you can they don't have a single outcome. There's not an output of a menu. There's many different outputs. There's not a single one. So there's the notion of menu remote, which I don't really go into here, but generally speaking, that when you press, if you were to play this disc and while the intro is playing, you press the menu button, that's what menu remote means. So, there's a notion in there that says, you can actually, what you want the disc to do if you're a real fussy user that presses the remote all the time, you can have it do nothing. You can basically say, don't do anything. Ignore the users mashing the menu button while I play this 5-minute intro video. It's like, ha ha ha. And understand that user experience matters in a lot of this. So this is my editorial opinion. When you drop a disc into a player and you inflict 10 minutes of movie trailers before you can even get to a menu, and every time you try and fast forward or hit menu, it goes not allowed. The sons of bitches have basically done this. They basically have said, no, menu remote is disabled, title menu is disabled, fast forward is disabled. All of these controls are basically restricted, and you're stuck. How does that make you feel? Does it make you feel awesome? No. It makes you feel like rage. You want to take the disc out and crack it in half and throw it across the room. So after you've said your namastes and your whatever, and made peace with your higher beings, you can understand that there are people in the world that don't want to sit through your crap. Your content. And so you should almost always build in the ability for shortcutting and getting to the point, because you'll appreciate it when somebody does it for something that you want to do. Being forced to sit through content that you don't want to see in order to see the content you do want to see, they have a name for that, and that's called commercials. And how many of you guys appreciate that? Not too many of you. Okay, done editorializing. Yay. All right. So, when you talk about a menu remote, you probably should set it to something. So if for some reason that you're in the middle of this intro and they go, nah, I want to skip it, they can actually press menu and you can say, okay, well then just go to the main menu and the default view of the main menu. There you go. And so they will be very happy and joyous in the fact that you've been nice. So yeah, also operations. This is the other part of this. So operations say all permitted. If you click set, it's going to not do anything. Come on, tell me that. Really? All right, fine. Maybe it's not. It's really not working. How fun is that? Oh, okay. So it's under the title disc. So you'll see that under the disk operations, you do have the ability to let people change, provide. They can basically with their remote or their controls, they can change how the disk plays for them. You can give them all of the control, none of the control, or some subset thereof. So you can, generally speaking, I would suggest that you leave everything enabled because once again, I don't want to have to editorialize, but you get the notion there. So the other parts of this, while we're kicking around on the disk, let's get back to the rest of these. On the menu itself. So when you guys look at, come on, Randy, where are we going? There we go, DVD player. So when you bring up DVD player, and even though we're not going to actually, really? You're not letting me, okay, there we go. If you look at the controls up here, you'll see that you have a menu button, a title button, eject button, and then playback controls, a cursor, an enter button. And then there's these different side buttons which actually tell you, basically this actually forces the end action to happen. This changes camera angles. This changes audio tracks. This is subtitles and so on. So you can actually close that up so that people don't see them. But your basic menu or your basic controls when you talk about DVDs and Blu-rays is you have a menu button, right? You have a title button. Did you know that you had a title button on these controls? You do. And when you talk about a title menu, that's what they're talking about here is the title button. If you press the title button on the remote control, what does the disc do? Again, you have the option of disabling it. I would not suggest that you do that. You also can set a main timeline for the disc. In this case, it is the same thing as the first play, which is disc intro, and that's fine. You do have the ability to change audio tracks. So generally speaking, the audio track that's default in the disc intro will be chosen. If you want to force a change to one of the 8 audio tracks or umpteen subtitle tracks, you can actually do that here, and so on. So knock yourselves out. Okay, back to this. Now we've got, okay, so we've done menu remote. That's also good. And then when we get to a menu, we now can look at some of the properties here so that you guys can have oh, well, come on, really? Really? Okay, fine. We'll do it this way. All right. You have the basic information that comes with the menu, the name, the description. Again, these are internal to the project. The end action of the menu is to stop. So if the end action is forced while the menu is showing on screen, the thing that it will do is stop playing the disc. Okay. Again, there's no override here because the stop action is not a timeline. If you actually changed it to that, no, even then you don't get to change the override. All right. The ability to stop playback is interesting. It's, it's as you like. We don't go into color sets here. We can talk a little bit about that in next week as part of some of the authoring stuff. And then also when you talk about the other thing that we didn't really get into with this content is that generally speaking, you have 2 aspect ratios that you can actually work with. There's the old 4:3 that is now very long in the tooth. And then you have the ability to do widescreen, which is what everybody more or less does these days. You also have a notion of motion. Now, what does motion mean? In this case, motion is adding a background video to your menu. In this case, we actually have a still image on here, so we're not going to keep. We're just going to leave the still image on there, and then and we don't talk about pop-ups mostly because that's a Blu-ray feature. Again, man, pop-up menus at this point, I'm not going to do it. If you guys really are desperately wanting to learn that sort of stuff, go soak your head in a tub and then dry it off. And then once you've come down from that desire, or take a nap. Taking a nap also helps a lot with getting over that feeling of wanting to learn pop-up menus and Blu-rays. But there are tutorials for that, and they're absolutely within your ability to grasp them if you really, really want to participate in that. But usually it involves creating Photoshop assets and other things that have transparency channels, and so you'll get to it. All right. So when we talk about this opening timeline, what we originally had was we had a disk intro asset. Okay. Now, unfortunately, that asset has gone missing on me, and I can't find it, and so you don't have it either. And so guess what? We're just not going to use it. No, I'm not even going to do that. So if you have this project open, you can actually, these ones that are in italics, disk intro, chapter 3, chapter 2, chapter 1, you can actually just delete them. What? You can't, it's in the current project? Well, that's fun. How is it being used? It's not transcoded, so it's like you don't have the asset. How are we using it? So it's not in any of the timelines either. Interesting. All right, well, I'm not going to flip about it right now. I don't think I'm using it here. No, not using it there. Not using it here. Oh, that's why. Okay, so it's being used in the chapter menu, and so I'm going to disable that. Really? You're not gonna let me do that either, huh? This is fantastic. All right, so I just basically right-clicked or control-clicked on the video or on that video entry and clicked delete, and now it says nothing there, and now I can delete this and it will go away. All right. So if you wanted to have this disk intro, you wanted to have this opening sequence where it basically is part of the introductory part of the film, what would you do? So one thing you could do, and what I ended up doing here was, if you open the disk intro, you'll see right now, I mean, what I've done is I actually have edited this in. Originally, you would open the disk intro and you would see the diskintro.mov file that was missing was here. I've cleared it. I've cleared that out by just deleting it. And in its place, I've actually added part of the same film media that plays as the main timeline and dropped it down here. So how, you know, again, we'll wipe this out. So if there's anything in the disk intro timeline, just go ahead and select it with your mouse, delete it. And then also, if you have an audio track here, you can command or right click on, or sorry, control or right click on the audio track and just click remove audio track. And now it's just going to be video, because I don't want to have the audio playing underneath this right now. So now you have the disk intro timeline showing right here with nothing on it. We can drag this down, and once again, I'm sitting here embarrassed because I've got this film leader showing as part of my opening bit. So what I would do is kind of fast forward this to about, it looks like it's about 33 seconds. Okay, and then I'm going to trim this to that by just using when you hover over it, you'll get the ripple, or actually it's not the ripple delete. I don't think I can get this to ripple delete correctly. So I just use the roll to get it into the timeline marker, and then I'll just move the clip over, come back to, oh, actually no, I want to do it even further. I want to get it to where it's basically past this part to where you see all of the containers on the side. So I'm going to get to that point, and then I want to basically drag this content over to the timeline, the playhead, so that the start of the clip starts with this pan shot, or this dolly, the side-to-side dolly, and then ending on the title. And then before it fades out, just before it fades out, so this is like 6.5 seconds or so in, I actually want to trim that one. So I zoom out, come to the end over here, bring it over, zoom in. See, because the editing tools inside of Encore are really not my favorite, I generally stick with just using just hovering over the edge of the clip and dragging it in to accommodate. So you can actually get it to this point where it brings it in. Again, it dropped in the audio track. I don't want the audio track, so I'm going to control click and click on remove audio track, and then now it's just a video track with no sound. Okay. So now you've got you have this this intro piece right here where it'll play to that finished stop, where basically it stops right there. As it happens, the main menu also is on that frame. So the idea is that the intro will play, it'll come to rest on the title, and then it will change to the main menu and show you the play and chapter buttons. Okay, and they're not terribly well contrasting against the background, but we can fix that. So this is one way to deal with creating content for your disk. Okay, where you take basically you take a main piece of content like an asset, and you just chop it up into a timeline. Now, for some things, you're not going to be able to do that, though. I think in most cases we can probably get by with some of this. If we knew that this actually was going from the in point is 5201, the out and the out point is sorry. Yeah, so the in point is 5201 and the duration is 614. So the idea is that this information we can actually use elsewhere if we wanted to use this exact set of content. So to the point of, if we remember that we also had in the chapter menu, we have this black box in the background. We want to have video show there. You can actually have this show up there. I'm not positive that it's going to work correctly though, because it's really just going to show. It's going to start from the very beginning of this. So nah, that's not going to work. Will it take a? Nope. It's only going to take a video asset. So yeah, in this case, because you can't change, you can't link this to anything other than a video asset, and you don't want to have it start here. You can't fast forward it. You don't have the ability to set an in point and an out point for the content here. So what we'll do is we can actually take this content into Premiere, and even though we just happen to have Premiere open, imagine that, we can actually go in to this set here, I believe. No. Sources, cache, no. Where are my sources? All right, I'll find it. Hang on. So where are you? Where are you located? Oh, you're under, see you guys, do you guys even have this? Maybe you don't have this content. I got to get you this content. All right. It is actually on the drive. If you guys don't see this, I apologize. It is going to be under the semester project on the server. So if you go to, nope. Come on, Randy. Where is it? Term project? Yeah, okay. So if you looked under here, you would find, no, you wouldn't find it there because, oh, yeah, that's right. It's under finished pieces. So it's right here, utterly direct full film HD. That's the same clip that's this one. So it's 100 megs. You can actually copy it to your desktop and use it. So if you copy that to your desktop, it should copy relatively fast. Yeah, there it is. It's already copied. At least for the teacher it is. And you can relocate this. So if any reason the content is missing, you can actually right or control click on this, go to locate asset. If this was missing, if this was actually an offline file, it would say it would have a locate asset would be available. Since we're going to change, I'm going to change the location of this asset. I'm going to basically have it use the desktop version of this file, and so there we go. So now that I have on my desktop, I have this file, I can go into Premiere, go to my desktop and load that file. And just create a quick sequence from the clip itself and find the portion that you want to be running in the background. So, pick a favorite part of this that you would like to have playing in the background. Maybe it's very underexposed shots of cows. So we'll, yeah, this is good. What the heck? Let's do it this way. So we'll pull the ripple, and we'll ripple edit that down to so that the start of it starts with cows and kind of ends before we get to this first shot. So let's zoom in here. I'm going to move it back a little bit. I'm just going to basically, fool with this to get I just want the picture to be what I want it to be. And then I'll do a Command K to edit this. I'm going to switch back to the select tool. I'm basically moving really fast just because I don't want to belabor it. It's almost 9 o'clock. So I want to also just apply default transitions. So I'm gonna control click, add default transitions to the video. So now it's gonna fade in from black. It's gonna show you some background stuff. It's gonna fade back out. All right. And for fun, I'm gonna unlink. I'm gonna unlink the audio. What did I just do? There we go. I'm gonna unlink the audio and I'm gonna delete it because all I want is the video right now. So I'm gonna do that, and then I'm just gonna quickly export this as a clip. So I'm going to export media, and as funny as it might seem, doing this as NTSC, this might be the one time that it would almost make sense. But no, I'm going to do it as a match source. Yeah, of course it's not compatible. Get over yourself. All right, fine. I'm going to do H.264 and match source, high bit rate, all the fun things. We will do. Yeah, it's 720p footage. That's fine. Everything else is fine. One pass VBR. I'm just going to click export. I'm going to do a hard export. I'm going to put it as opening dark. I'm going to put underexposed cows. That's what it is. Okay, so underexposed cows. I'm not going to put it in there. I'm going to put it on the desktop so that it all goes to where I want it to go. Click export. This should go relatively fast. Again, we're using recent hardware. Okay, so now that's done. We can now go back into Encore, import this. I just double click in the empty part of the project, pull in the clip as an asset, and now here it is. Okay. Now I can actually go into the menu here and use the pick whip and pull up. Oh, Jesus. Pull the wrong one. There we go. Pull the correct one. So now what happens is when this chapter menu plays, it's going to show that video in the background. It's not going to show it to you right now because it's not playing. We have to preview the project. So you we just did the opening sequence, and you saw that it played the opening bit, and then landed on the menu. So if we go to chapters, you'll see, well, that didn't work. Yay, Randy. All right, so exit. I got to do, there's another setting in here, isn't there? Nope, not hold, not duration. Oh, there's actually. I actually have to render this, believe it or not. So in order for this to actually be visible here, you go to transcode now. And then once it's done, it will finish, and then it will play correctly. The other thing that we get to in this, and what have I not covered to this point, is for tonight, because next week we will go into a bit more the fussiness of the flow chart and how you can plug things together. But the idea when you deal with a flow chart, when you're dealing with a disk layout like this, the key thing you want to keep in mind is to not have anything not connected, okay? So when you talk about menu items, or when you talk about menus in the sense of how they're structured, you always want every button to actually go someplace that it should go next. It should always have, you should have, every button that needs to have an action should have an action assigned to it. Every piece, every timeline should have an end action that makes sense. You shouldn't leave anything with the value of not set, so that you're just keeping in mind that the whole project has it's a seamless and self-contained experience that doesn't leave the viewer wondering what's wrong or what's going on. That they always have a sensible direction to take, or a sensible next step to take. So that's why when you go to this menu, you'll see that you have two buttons, one that goes to play, one goes to chapters. Then you have a chapter menu, which has 3 buttons along the top, but it also has some navigation buttons down below. And each of those has to go to someplace else as well. And each of those actually, these buttons all link back to the main menu, because there's only one chapter menu. And then, so you could leave these as disconnected, but when you go to build, you'll see that Encore starts to complain about these things. So, all right. So now that it's transcoded, I believe this should build correctly. So, and if I hit the title menu, it skips the video. That's the good news. Ah, come on. All right. It's not playing. I'll figure it out for next week, because I know there's one trick I've missed, but it's like 9 o'clock and I'm about as out of gas as you guys. So you'll see that as you navigate these, you do have still images that relate to these different chapters. The way that you set those is actually, if you go to the main timeline, you'll see that there's actually chapter markers showing here. And you have the notion of a chapter marker, which is the little, it's the house-shaped, kind of marker there. But then you also have this other one, which corresponds to what they call the poster frame. And that's actually the still image that you see in the buttons for the chapter menu is dictated by the poster frame. So if we change this poster frame to that, you'll see that it's updated it to something else, okay? The nice thing about the chapter menu also is that for the chapter menu itself, you actually can animate these buttons, and what it will do is it will render those buttons as well, so that they will loop from the point of the chapter mark or the poster frame and forward. So again, if you want to see how that all plays out, we should be able to render this. All right, so let me get this sorted again. No. All right. There's something about the preview setting that I got to go back into here. Nope, that's not it. All right. Well. No, there's a setting. I know there's a setting in here. I know it's oh, I'm so close. It's making me sick. No? Chapters. Oh, you don't want to do anything now. I see how you are. Oh, see, that's what I did. All right. And oh, there we go. So yeah, so the part I was missing was this. I every time I play with this, I got to remember. So if you want to render a menu, you actually have this little button under the preview that will let you do that. And it's this little button right here, and it's very inconspicuous. And if you hover over it, it doesn't tell you anything. It's fantastically useful that way. But as soon as you click it, it will render the menu for you. Now this is kind of a mini build of the menu. So it's kind of an ad hoc. It's basically just doing it. So now you'll see that all of the buttons have video playing, and underneath is video of underexposed cows. So, all right, and then it will loop on each of these indefinitely until you get sick of it. Okay, and so this is this is basically how you can do some of the, you can start to do some of the rigging of a disk easily, above and beyond the simple stuff of just putting a chapter menu up there with images. And what we're going to do next week is, because yeah, this is basically it for tonight. What we're going to do next week is talk about what goes into making these buttons. Okay, what goes into making these buttons? What actually and how you navigate from one to the next? Because you know, when you work with menus, you deal with this cursor. You know, most people don't watch a DVD or Blu-ray on their TV at home using a mouse, right? Whereas a mouse, you can just kind of mouse over a button and it will go in. Then you click on it and it goes where you want. Most people are going to have a more limited experience with a set of cursors and a selection button. And so you need to, and there's something to be done about what happens when you're here and you press right. Or what happens when you're there and you press left? What does the menu do? That's a question. That's not automatic. I mean, if you let Encore figure it out for you, it will make what it thinks is a sensible choice, but it may not be what you would expect as a viewer for the menu to do. And the other thing about the way that you do menu buttons sets up some interesting usability questions of how you can hijack the user experience. And this is also how a lot of what they call DVD Easter eggs are done, is by messing with the how menu buttons function. Because when you move menu buttons around, if you do a combination of menu buttons, you can actually reveal different things that you normally wouldn't reveal. And this can, we can talk Konami codes for all you geeks that are out there. There's nothing directly related to that, but you could conceivably come up with a way to build a set of menus or a set of buttons that basically creates that experience. Not suggesting that it's an awesome idea, but it's possible. Okay, so for that is pretty much it for this week. If you guys haven't brought up your homework, you can do so now. Other than that, have a good week. We'll see you next week, where we embark on further fun, happy, lucky, fun adventures with Encore CS6. So, enjoy, right? You guys love it. Tell me you love it. Okay, don't lie to me. I don't love it either. All right, have a good night, guys. Thanks.
What do you love about Encore?
What's that?
What do you love about Encore?
What do I love about Encore? That it's been decommissioned. So, all right. Yeah, it's about the same as Flash. Yeah, it's I love Encore about as much as I love Flash. But like I said, it's a necessary evil still, so I don't diss it too badly.
I'm almost caught up, not quite, but I'm getting there.
You're getting there.
But the special project, I wasn't sure what the name was for the special project, so usually you're pretty.
Something
specific.
original is what I would have called it.
That's what I did.
Oh,
okay, good.
Good job. Then you did exactly what you should have.
Thank you.
All right. So all you people online, have a good night. I'm going to shut down, and the chat will stop working. So take it easy, guys.